this one is about making a bowl. So we'll just go through our centering process quickly. Now bowls are okay. They're not too difficult to do. They're the easiest shape to start off with because the centrifugal force of the wheel naturally pushes the clay out into a bowl shape. So I'm just loading up my clay. When you're making a bowl, you want to work with about 600 grams of clay for like a little sort of porridgey bowl, or 800 grams of clay for more of a udon bowl. I've got 800 here. Okay, so cone up. You cone down, and you want to think about the profile of your bowl. So do you want to create kind of a wide sort of wide flat open dog bowl shape? Do you want to create a very upright, more conical bowl? So at this point you need to make a quick decision about the foot of your bowl. So depending on how petite you want the base of your bowl to be, you'll kind of stop wherever you want to go. So if you're going to do like a more wide open dog bowl-y kind of thing, you're going to keep centering downwards and allowing that clay to come out a little bit further on the pottery wheel. If you want to keep your bowl in more of an upright shape, and I do recommend for bigger bowls that you do try and keep your base smaller, so then you're able to create more of a kind of cone shape, and then from there you can belly out the bowl. I feel like it's maybe easier to work with. So I'm just going to leave the base of my bowl that size there. So I'm going to stop my coning down and leave it at that. Okay, so once you're happy with the width of the base that you're going to leave it at, you're going to start to open up the bottom of your clay. So get your water, and I just rest my hand just gently on the clay, and I'm going to use my thumb like a tool to dig into the center of the clay. So I'm just resting there and letting my thumb find the natural center, and I'm just pushing down a little bit so that I've got my clay with a little divot, so I know where I'm going to start pushing my hand down into the middle. And I'm going to use my thumb. So again, I'm wrapping my hand around the outside of the clay. I'm keeping that nice and compressed and tight. I don't want that to start wobbling. And I'm going to use the stronger fingers to just push my thumb down into the middle of the clay and create a little divot there for myself. Okay, so what you want to do is check your depth. You need a needle tool for that. You will get to a point where you don't need to use the needle tool anymore, but while you're still getting the hang of throwing, you definitely should. So what you do is you push the needle tool right down to the base of the thing, and you're going to run your finger down the pot, grasp onto the needle tool, let your forefinger hit the bottom of your pot, and you're going to pull it out, and then you're going to look at it. So that there is how thick the bottom of my pot is. Now depending on how much of a foot you want to put on your bowl when you're trimming it, you want to leave, I mean you definitely want about 1 centimetre, you wouldn't want to go any thinner than that, but you also don't want to go too thick. I mean you want to aim for a pretty sort of reasonable bottom that's not going to be cut through when you're trimming or when you're wiring your pot off. So I would aim for about 1 centimetre. I actually don't know, is it 1 centimetre or 1.5 centimetres? Anyway, I'd aim for, you know, something about the kind of depth of your fingernail. Thumbnail, depending on how long your nails are. Alright, so I'm just going to dig down a tiny little bit more because I'd like that to be a bit shorter. And again, the whole time when you're throwing, you want to have your two hands working together. So you want to be always reaching for your hands, and that gives you a lot more stability. You can see once again my arm is resting here on the side of my wheel, braced. This is my nice stable arm. And then this hand here is going to be the one that does all the motions of everything. So I'm not pushing or doing anything, I'm just feeling what's happening with the clay. Is it nice and centered? Do I have any lumps and bumps? And you can see the way my hand is wrapping around the whole thing. I'm also helping to compress the rim. So this area here, this is going to end up as the rim of your bowl. So you want to keep your rims very well compressed. So for the same reason as I said in the centering video, compression is going to increase the strength of your pot. So it's going to increase the strength while you're throwing, and it's going to increase the strength once it's finished and been fired. So what you want to do is, once you're happy with the depth of your pot, you're just going to start to, so you're wrapping this around, and you're just going to start to pull your internal fingers out towards your external fingers. So this finger's staying rigid and straight, and these fingers are just going to start to move their way outwards. So it's good practice when you're making a bowl to create a curved bottom that matches the exterior profile of your pot. You don't want like a bottom that goes straight up and then out. That doesn't feel, it doesn't read as nicely when you're looking at the internal surface of the bowl. So it is good practice to aim to create a curved bowl bottom. For a cylinder and a plate, you want to just like come straight up, but for a bowl you're aiming for a gentle curve. So in order to do that, when I'm pulling out, I'll just like wrap my fingers, roll up, and I'll just ease off the pressure as I'm coming towards the sides, and that will allow me to have a bit of a curvy bottom. And you can see that the pot's starting to come out already, just from those internal actions. So I'm just doing it like this so that you can see, but normally I'd have my hands sort of clasped together always and be making those actions with my hands together. Okay. Alright, so once I'm happy with the bottom of my pot, I'm gonna find myself a little area down the bottom here. I'm gonna make myself a little shelf. So sometimes just dig in, scrape that clay off, and you want somewhere for your thumb to be able to nestle into, because what you're going to start doing now is pinching your internal fingers and your thumb, and you're going to just pinch them together, and then you're going to push this hand upwards. So the clay is being pinched and compressed, and it has nowhere to go except for upwards. So I'm going to do that now using my bracing hand to really support the pinch of that thumb. And I'm just pushing this blobby donut of clay upwards. So that's your first pull. And I'm just going to compress my rim again, particularly with a bowl where it's really stretched out. You want to keep that rim compression. Every time you do a pull, you want to recompress. So whether that's just holding it like that, whether it's wrapping your pinching and using this soft part of your fingers to just really wrap it around, you're creating a bit of a U shape there that rim just has to sit inside. Every time you compress your rim, it just helps to make sure that it's all even as well. If you're pulling in an uneven way, then you're going to create inconsistencies in your rim. So you can always correct those by, particularly when your walls are very thick, by just recompressing the rim down and getting them all back into line. So I'm going to come back down to the bottom again, make sure I've got a little ledge to lean into. It's getting a little bit tight for my thumb to fit all the way down the bottom, so I'm going to tuck my fingers under and then pull that clay up. Just slowly. So you want to make sure that your pot is going through the whole diameter of the pot, is running through your fingers before you move up. So if you're moving too quickly or too slowly, so if you go too quickly, then you'll do this sort of thing. Whoa! And you'll create these like thicker and thinner areas in your pot, and that is going to manifest up the top of your lip. It's going to start getting wonky and wobbly, and you're going to start having these strange little weaknesses in your pot. So if you've done that, if you've pulled too quickly and created little weaknesses, what I like to do is just create a little, I don't know, keep my fingers nice and straight and stable, one on the inside, one on the outside, and just hold them there and let the clay run through them. And I'm just slowly moving up the pot to just try and even out those little uneven parts that I've inadvertently created. Now if you're pulling too slowly, then you're going to focus too long on a certain area, and you are going to create a lot of weakness in that area. So if you have the wall of your pot is way thinner here and then way thicker here, then the weight and the thickness of the pot is going to collapse that thin area that you've taken too long to pinch on. So what you want to do is just very consistent pinches the whole way up the pot. So I will start with the width of my pot down the bottom, and I'll dig in a tiny bit, and then I'll just hold that same distance the entire way up. I won't, pinch harder or softer or harder or softer. It's just a matter of like getting your hands into the, like a, sort of a cramped, crabby position, and just holding that pinch the whole way up. And that is just, you'll get there, it's just a matter of practice. You just need to take your time and just get to know the feel of the clay. Okay, so I'm going to do probably one more pull. I'm just digging myself another little divot to get it. And you can see I'm beginning to pull outwards to allow that pot to do what it wants to do naturally and fan outwards. Oh, man, so hunchy. Okay. And I'm using, because I definitely can't get my thumb down to the bottom, I'm using this whole flat part on my finger, and I'm still keeping my hands connected as much as I possibly can. So I find when the walls get thinner and therefore more unstable, I like to pull with a wider surface. So I'm just pulling like that. My hands are moving up. I find that the wider surface, it helps to scrape off some of that clay slip. So the drier your pot is, the more strength it has. And also it just helps to prevent any little weaknesses, any uneven pinches, any inadvertent slips from happening that will create issues in my pot. Okay, so I'm just drying all the wetness out of the center of the pot now, just to give it a bit of strength. Once you're happy with the thickness of the walls of your pot, and you do want to aim, you want the walls to be consistently thick the whole way up. For bowls, it's completely acceptable to have a thicker area down the bottom here, so that gives these walls, because this wall is just hanging out with nothing underneath it, it gives those walls just a little bit more stability when you're pulling them out, and also when you're starting to shape the pot. But for a cylinder, you want to aim to have your walls nice and consistent the whole way up and down. Also, I quite like to trim an extra kind of bit of shoulder into my pot, so I do like to leave a thicker area here so that I can get kind of a more elegant shape to the bottom. So that's all just a matter of preference, but overall you do want your walls to be nice and consistent. Okay, when I'm shaping my pots personally, I like to use my rubber rib to shape them, And so what I'm going to do is put the soft pads of my fingers onto the inside of the wall, and I'm going to push against my rib. So my rib is nice and flexible. You can see I can sort of manipulate it however I like. So I'm going to, I don't know, it's hard to know what you're seeing here. So anyway, I'm going to curve my rib around and I'm going to push the walls of the pot into that rib. So like so. I'm just going to put my rib firmly against the outside. And I'm just going to put a little bit more of a belly into that pot. So I'm pushing firmly down here and then really easing off up here. But I'm supporting the inside wall of the pot with my finger so it doesn't can off. Okay, I feel like that's okay. I'm making oyas, little garden pots that help to keep your garden wet. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm just going to push it out a tiny bit because it needs to match up with another piece. So I'm just pushing outwards with my fingers on the inside. Just check that, that's fine. Okay, so once you're happy, you've got no moisture on the inside of your pot. It's very, very, very important that you don't leave any water on the inside of your pot. You want to look in there and you want the same consistent sort of lovely satin sheen of clay the whole way through. You don't want any little glistening spots where you've left water. If you leave water, you will 100% get S-cracks in the final pot, and that's very frustrating. So just take a moment, have your sponge while the pot's going round on the wheel. Always have the pot going round first before you lay your hands on it. Then get your sponge that you've squeezed out and just really push that sponge nice and firmly into the base of the pot. And that will help to even out any little dimples and things you've got there as well from your centering process. Okay, once you're happy, you're going to you choose whichever side of your Z thing you want to use, and you're going to hold it right up the top of the tool so that you've got good control. If you hold it at the bottom, then it can easily snag and get out of your control. So you want to hold it right firmly at the top, and you just come at it from whatever angle suits you. So I'm going to come up that way, so you're coming in it from the side and just pull off that stream of clay. And you just want to take off any of the excess clay that you don't need now. So you can see already that's really refined the shape of the pot. That clay can be trimmed off, tomorrow or next week whenever you're ready to trim. But it is easier to just, you've got lovely wet clay there that can be immediately re-wedged. Leather hard clay, which is what it will be tomorrow, is, there's a bit more work to re-wedge. You have to sort of rehydrate it. So you might as well just make life easier for yourself and trim it off now. Okay, once you've done all that, you're going to get your wire, and you want your wire to be nice and tight, and you're going to be pushing it right down to the wheel head. So you're going to kind of come in front of you. That's the easiest way to do it, but I'll do it here so you can see. And you're going to have your thumbs as close to the bottom of the pot as they can possibly be. And that will again help to let that wire pull straight through. So you're going to pull it right through. Scrape your hands off, very important. You want your hands to be relatively clean and dry. And then for picking a bowl off the wheel head, I like to do the, like the Vulcan hands. And so you're just going to use this area in here to pick the bowl off the wheel. And you just put it down gently. Don't slop it down. Don't be rough with your clay. It's very, very fragile. So make sure you do everything nice and gently for your lovely little clay that you spent all that time to throw. So I'll just go through that again quickly. Get you to speed it up, Dave.